Because I haven't seen the answer to that question addressed, let alone given, in any of the mass media. Now here on September 14, AFP wrote that the United States is mired in a once-in-a-century financial crisis. Former Federal Reserve Chief Alan Greenspan said, adding that the crisis still had a long way to go. Now this was a day which went into the history books as Black Sunday. Last Sunday, when everything seemed to break loose. Here is an article by Die Welt, a German paper, from September 17, addressing the AIG bailout, saying that for the second time this month, the U.S. government intervened to bail out a private financial company. The Federal Reserve said Tuesday it would provide, notice this, up to $85 billion in an emergency 2-year loan to rescue AIG. The Welt goes on to say the move was similar to the government's seizure on September 7 of mortgage giants Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac, where the Treasury Department said it was prepared to put up as much as $100 billion over time in each of the two companies. And then the question was raised and asked, both moves were bound to raise questions about the use of taxpayer money to bail out private firms. I found a very interesting, eye-opening, and thought-provoking article which was published by CBS on September 17. And I'd like to read from this article, because they asked the question, who is going to bail out Uncle Sam? It says, the federal government may seem like a financial knight on a white steed riding to rescue big companies in trouble. The irony is that Uncle Sam's got enormous money problems of his own. The government is far deeper in debt than any of the companies it's bailing out. It goes on to say, as of this morning, the national debt stands at over $9.634 trillion. That's trillion with a capital T. It says it's nearly $4 trillion more than it was on the day President Bush took office. This year alone, it's costing taxpayers more than $230 billion just to pay the interest on the national debt. The article goes on to say it's getting bigger every day thanks to the relentless rush of the government spending money it has to borrow. The federal deficit for the fiscal year ending September 30 is expected in the range of $400 billion. In fact, the government doesn't have the $85 billion needed to bail out insurance giant AIG. The Treasury Department announced this morning it would auction new debt to raise funds for the Federal Reserve's rescue plan for AIG. But where does the federal government go when it needs a bailout? Taxpayers need only look in the mirror. The Washington Post added on September 17, what we are witnessing may be the greatest destruction of financial wealth that the world has ever seen. The greatest destruction of financial wealth the world has ever seen? Notice this article by Der Spiegel, a German magazine, from September 19, which was titled, The World as We Know It is Going Under. It says, panic is the word of the hour on Wall Street. Of course, they talk about the Morgan Stanley situation where that giant is looking for a buyer. This article goes on to say that it really does look as if the foundations of U.S. capitalism have shattered. Many are drawing comparisons with the Great Depression. And then they are quoting here Donald Trump saying that he sees those parallels. And also the Wall Street Journal apparently wrote an article titled, Worst Crisis Since the 30s and No End in Sight. So far, the article in Der Spiegel goes on to say, the U.S. presidential candidates have made few helpful remarks about the crises other than the usual slogans. And frankly, we don't expect much, do we? Because we can understand that they don't have the solutions, as the present government doesn't have the solutions. You think they have the solutions? Notice to this plan, which was just announced today as I am recording this program, and you think and tell me whether that is the solution to our problems. The Washington Post wrote on Friday, September 19, The Bush administration is urgently preparing a massive intervention to revive the U.S. financial system, including a plan to sweep away the unpaid loans that are choking banks and blocking the flow of money to borrowers. Congressional leaders gave bipartisan support to the administration's efforts. So, in a nutshell, when this plan fails, nobody has each other to blame because they all were in support of it. Now, what is that plan supposed to do? The article in the Washington Post goes on to say, the plan involves using hundreds of billions of dollars in government funding to buy bad loans with the purpose of wiping them out. USA Today wrote on September 19 that, according to their estimates, all of this is going to cost the taxpayers up to $1 trillion. Now, wait a minute. Don't we already have a debt of $9.6 trillion? So we just add another trillion. Great plan. But, let's wait. Let's see how this plan is supposed to work. Let's assume you are a CEO of a company which is heavily in debt. And then you have friends, and they are also indebted, but their debts are much smaller than yours. So what do? You go out and you buy their debts for the purpose of wiping them out. But you don't have the money. So you go first and borrow the money so that you can buy the bad debts to wipe them out. That is the gigantic plan which we are being introduced to, which is supposed to solve all our financial problems.